Good evening and welcome to Edge Radio Australia. I'm Martine from Martine's Eco Bites. Welcome to our pre-election grill. I think we're in for a pretty interesting night. I'm really primed up after just getting back from Canberra. Warm fuzzies there. I have come back with a even deeper awareness of just the state of Australian politics, really. As most people know, that I went to testify in an inquiry again about the offshore wind turbine uh, consultation process, and we all turned up to Parliament, and then Senator Sarah Hanson-Young decided to cancel on us less than 24 hours before our inquiry started. So that warmed me up very nicely to what's happening in the federal election. So we did have our own inquiry. So I am going to say thank you on behalf of those that want to uphold some democracy and freedom of speech, which would be the Senator Ross Cadell, as well as Leah Blythe. So thank you for both of you for hearing all of those community members and groups that came to Canberra to represent something that is felt so strongly for all the communities around Australia. But tonight, I have a lovely guest with me, and she's here to talk about the state election. I'd like to welcome the Honourable Sophia Marmond.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Martine, for having me on tonight.
How wonderful. I know I'm blending in with green here. It's like I might have to pop it with something else here, but lovely fit that you came in. I think that it's important that people we're pretty relaxed around here, as you know. And I think that coming to talk about not only the things you're passionate about, but we've got some funny little questions as well, just to have a bit of fun. I think everyone's a little bit probably burnt out. They're looking forward to next week sometime when this is all done and dusted. And I can certainly comprehend the stress levels after going through the absolute ringer for the last week myself. I have a bit of an insight, and yeah.
Okay, well, I'm sorry to hear that because it's a bit of a ride. I'll be really pleased at 6 p.m. tomorrow that this part is done, finished, and then I can sleep in on Sunday, and that'll be exciting.
So, Sophia, you are running as a group above the line, and that's Group M, is that correct?
Yes, so we're a group of independents. There's 5 of us. We formed an alliance, and the reason for doing that is that we now have a box above the line. So we call them M, stick a 1 in there, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So what the Labor government has done over the last couple of years is really try to reduce representation in the House, in the upper house in particular.
Yeah.
So they got rid of the electorates. And what that means is that regional areas are much less represented in there. So we're going to end up with a more Perth-centric upper house, which is a shame. So,
yeah, because when we're talking about demographics, it creates balance. Yeah. So you need sort of a polarity of energies to find a common ground or a balance in between, right? And so when now it's disproportionate, that there's going to be a viewpoint from a lot of people that don't have connection to a lot of rural and regional areas now because of people that have moved away from their areas, the population growth in Perth. We've talked about this a lot on my show, and that's why representing community and rural groups is so important.
That's right.
I am adamant about making sure that happens. And this feeds into something. I had a conversation. This is why I think we love having these just like relaxed conversations. So when I was in Parliament, I had some opportunities. I was in Canberra. So I did meet with some people in the Liberal Party and a number of other parties. And I did speak to people and had very frank conversations about the concerns about the environment and the way that there's an overarching agenda right now that things like biodiversity and habitat protection has gone out the window as a priority above like this kind of climate hysteria reaction to modelling instead of grassroots ecology-based or science-based research regionally as well. So one of the things that was said to me, and I'm not going to talk about who it came from because to me it's not really that relevant as far as just the perspective of what I was told or said to me. And I was told by someone that we have a 2-party system in this nation. That's what we've inherited. And then that person went on to tell me that we need to get rid of independence and people need to get on board just with either being in Liberal or the Labor Party and have a good mix, but that'll be a great representation. I'd like to just say how, for me, the person sitting next to them, they were obviously not in those parties and they disagreed instantly. And I was like, okay, what would be your feedback in that kind of thing? So we have a model where there's just one group or the other that you have to choose from.
Okay, so I don't think that is proper representation at all. So first we get rid of the regions, then we want to get rid of minor parties and independents. And if that were to happen, obviously when the Labor Party is in charge, the Liberals know they'll be in charge at some stage too. So it'll just swap around. So it gives them a lot of safety. They also will make it a lot easier to push legislation through because they don't have to deal with any of the minor parties or independents, make any deals with them to try and get legislation across the line.
So we're talking about, again, that's that negotiation or finding the middle ground. So it's going to be one. The other thing, I look at it from a different perspective also of a consciousness level. So if you've got two parties, it's talking about duality, right?
Yeah.
So if we have a representation where it's broken down into more of a fractional representation, to me, or you could have independents as a group, or you could have minor parties as a group, and so that there would be more seats available instead of just the two-party system. I feel like there needs to be a real change because this person said to me, look, this is what's based off, the Westminster that we got from the UK.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the UK and going, is that really the best model we can do from looking at the state of things there?
Yeah. No, I think we can do better. If anything, I think we should get rid of the two parties in the upper house, have people with no parties.
Yeah.
So they don't have to toe the party line.
I like that.
Yeah, they can vote according to their conscience and also to vote as they get lobbied. Like when you're in there, if something comes up that people feel very strongly about, log off your laptop on Friday afternoon, and then by Monday, all of a sudden you have 250 emails about something. And that is a really good indication that people feel strongly about a particular subject. Yeah. And as a representative in there, we need to take that into account. And a party policy should not interfere with proper representation.
Yeah.
And if you're in the Labor Party, for instance, if you vote against the party, you get kicked out.
Yeah, unfortunately, Rennick had a bit of a situation like that too, which was actually really shocking to me. He's always been someone who's very much represented the people, and for him to be booted from the Liberals was actually really disconcerting.
Yeah.
I think it was shocking to a lot of people because it's got to a point now where it's like the Liberals have become less tolerant or less broad-minded. And I guess that's the thing that we're kind of talking about that, I guess. So what are one of the things that you'd like to share tonight that people might not know about you, that might be something that gives them an insight to who you are and some of your core values that you might not have chosen to share before? I think that sharing that is kind of a good thing so people know a bit more who you are.
Okay. I will always follow the science, right? And my slogan for this campaign is to follow nature and always question the narrative.
Absolutely.
And I think that describes me quite well. So my background is as a naturopath and traditional Chinese medicine practitioner, and I can see how far removed we are from nature.
Yes.
And those are the sort of things that we need to bring back, that connection. And when I look at our food chain, all the chemicals in there, shocking. I mean, really, if you go into the supermarket, you only need to walk around the outside aisles. Don't worry about the aisles in the center because that's where you find all the sugar and the highly processed, all of that stuff. Yeah. I would like to see our water cleaned up as well because we are looking at dioxins and PFAS, xenoestrogens, all sorts of things that are disrupting our natural system, our endocrine system.
Both male and female.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sperm count has dropped right down, and infertility in women has gone right up.
Yeah.
So in following nature, I would like to really carry that forward. To make sure that we have access to good quality protein, good quality fruit and vegetables, organic or regenerative farming principles, all of that. So, that's one of the ways that I
Love
would
it.
vote in the chamber.
A lot of that, so also what you're talking about is like that reconnection, I guess, too.
Yeah.
That's what it's about, understanding where food comes from. It's talking about understanding what's good for nourishing the body, and then looking at as a base by base, science base, what is good for balancing everyone's their own individual nutrition. Rebalancing.
If you have good microbiome in the soil, you have good microbiome in the animals that live on that soil.
Correct.
Right, and that translates into a better microbiome for us. So your microbiome is really important for allergies, autoimmune disorders, and mental health. Right, so you actually get serotonin and melatonin, I think, are two of the hormones, feel-good hormones that are made in your gut. You know how you might get a gut feeling about things? That's because you're
listening to that. The connection's there. Yeah. Absolutely. Do we have any questions? I'm just checking that we might have some questions that have come through on the channel. We'll have a check.
Oh, we most certainly do.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Malloy.
Now, the cheap seats back here. Actually, this is actually an interesting one, and I'll just keep off camera on this.
Yeah.
But just the short of this is we've actually been sent some questions from one of the prisons here in WA, which is very, very interesting. And a lot of the inmates have actually put a lot of effort into this. So I think it's very, very important. I could go on with many questions, and I think we'll probably get to that.
Simple one's probably the best answer tonight. Simple one.
Yeah. But there's an underlying theme here, and with the silence in the background, it's quite apt.
Bravo! Thank you for that sound effect.
I tell you what, we know people.
We'd stopped out the front. Better be not.
No, that's absolutely no worries. So essentially, what I was going to say is that the questions tend to be really related very strongly to domestic violence.
Okay.
So I'd like to know your particular stance, your feelings about justice, domestic violence industry, and well, basically the entire broader sort of scheme.
Okay. I mean, that's a really complex subject.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about the family court system to have a really solid opinion on that. I do know that it needs to be updated, and that currently both fathers and mothers in that system often don't get the right outcome that is required there. Right.
I think the system, like what you've just identified, is how I've also seen it, that the system is failing on both levels.
Yeah.
For those who are true victims and those that aren't true victims, and it's biased against one and biased against the other. So it's almost juxtaposed, causing scenarios that weren't even existing. That's how I felt
Look,
about
as much as I enjoy the equality of things, let's be absolutely frank.
Yeah.
If we're talking family court, 84.1% of cases, 84.1% of cases alienate the father, take the father away from the children. That's the reality of it. So we have to be honest. It's like suicide. We have to talk about it in a general way because of the stats are 76% of suicides are men. Now, there is terrible, horrible domestic violence happening. Women, children, and men are all suffering
victims,
It's absolutely horrendous and something we need to take away. But the questions that are sort of circular, well, they're basically they're circular here, I guess. What the inmates are actually asking is, talking about, is the amount of inmates that are actually in there on domestic violence charges on basically false accusations. There is a substantial problem with this, a massive problem with this.
Are they mentioning like to do with RVOs, to do with like broken marriages?
A lot of it is about that.
Okay.
A lot of, and also the overall one of the stories I was reading, and I'm sorry, I'm sort of paraphrasing because it's quite lengthy, as you can imagine. But to paraphrase this particular story, there's a gentleman who is currently in jail right now. He's written his story about the fact that he and his partner were arguing, were fighting away and being, having a very toxic time of it.
Yeah.
When the police came, they found that both of the parties were actually beating each other up, and actually, and I'm probably using a little poetic license with that.
Yeah.
They were at each other is the term that he's used. But even though the woman in question didn't actually want it to go any further because she was as guilty as the gentleman, the fact of the matter is the gentleman was taken away and he is currently right now in Casuarina prison.
Yeah.
We're seeing this a lot. The officer in charge of the the officer in charge of the Midland station actually has said this to me, and I'll be as verbatim as I possibly can. He said to me, if they go into a domestic violence situation, they are instructed, simple as this, to take the man away from the situation and consider him under the Duluth principles to be the perpetrator and the woman to be the victim. And the Duluth principles are a study that was done 45 years roughly ago.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, that's what. But I said, look, why are you using those principles? He said basically this: the feminist movement in Australia is so strong that if we, as policemen, charge the woman, it's at the end of our career. They literally have so much political heat from it.
Well, as a woman, I'm just going to say that's unfair. Full stop.
Well, yeah, look, and it's so sad that it has to become gendered. But we've got someone in here right now, and I'm reading, as I say, I'm paraphrasing his story.
So can we just because we're going to run low on time.
Yep.
The actual really specific question about what they want.
Well, my specific question that I'm taking from this, and as I say, there's so much information here, I am trying to wrap it up.
Yeah.
But essentially, is that the system is unbelievably biased. There are people who are controlling it. False accusations, we all know. We've had family court judges who have actually said this in their retirement. They have actually said, as they've retired, in their statements, that they believe that 80% of claims of domestic violence are false.
Right.
There's video evidence of women making false accusations and men going to jail for it. Okay? Now, what would be your position if you were in a position there where you're in the upper house, you've got a position of balance of power, when cases like this, well, not cases as such, when legislation comes, like the incredibly ridiculous and very, very sexist legislation that's got to do with coercive control that's currently being pushed through several different places in Australia, and it's here in WA right now. If you're in a position in the upper house, what would you do?
Okay. I would probably like to see an inquiry happen into the family court and the practices associated with that. Yeah.
Look at the statistics.
Yeah, look, as an independent in the upper house, I am not going to have that much power. But what I can do is I can present petitions, right, asking for inquiries to be done. You know,
why there's such an increase in cases like that where people that's what it needs to be.
And I can actually bring up one of the reasons for it, if I may just interrupt, and I apologise for that.
Yeah.
But I just want to get this gentleman's point across.
Yeah.
So this man has actually found himself in there because currently there are actually emergency payments being made to women of amounts between $5,000 and $10,000 emergency payments. This is financially incentivising making false accusations.
Yeah.
And of course, if we take the family court into account, this basically means that, generally speaking, a man walks out of family court bankrupt.
Yeah.
This is very real. This man is doing hard time in a maximum security prison. And I just want to know, he wants to know, obviously, and I'm certainly very curious on this too. As an independent, I do know your restrictions, but would it be something that you've got a strong opinion on, and how would you move forward?
I don't know enough about this at the moment as yet, right? But when bills like that can come up, right, we get offered briefings, we can consult with people in the industry, so we have options there. So, and this is about always questioning the narrative. Right? I would do a deep dive into something like that and try to find out as much as I possibly can, and then base my opinion and what I try to do in the chamber on what I learn.
Yeah.
Right? Now, one of the things that I've learned over the last couple of years is that when we're looking at news, we have right-wing and left-wing news, right? And I have news sources on both sides of the political spectrum there. Because if you only listen to one, you don't get the full story. And if you only listen to the other, and that the truth is always somewhere in the middle. Yeah, so I'm of a Dutch background, and one of the sayings that we have in the Netherlands is the golden middle path. Right? And that applies to bell curves of populations, all sorts of things. So that's what I would be looking at, getting as much information as I can, and then try to find my way through that in the middle of the data somewhere, simply because.
And all I can say is that when you've got someone like Sophia, that has already been in the upper house and done this form of representation for community groups before. And so this is where doing it at the state level, you're probably going to, as I've just experienced, when it comes to inquiries, that people can just veto it at a drop of a hat. So this is where I think it's different.
I have not had that happen, by the way, but
never.
Not over the last 4 years. I haven't come across that. So I've been part of many inquiries. We had one larger inquiry.
Great.
There were other inquiries ongoing, and I think it's incredibly rude if you have people travel from the other side of the country to give a deposition or put in a submission, and then to say we've cancelled it. That's incredibly
But it's okay. We've
disrespectful.
kept our receipts, and I'm sure we're going to put it forward to Senator Sarah Hanson-Young to see if she'd like to reimburse us for our efforts and energy in the journey.
What a wonderful idea.
Yeah, we'll do that.
And I will put my opinion forward very much of the Greens. The Greens do not care about the environment. They are socialists. And everything they seem to do is actually a grab of power. The way that they've actually many years ago actually asked me to join the party as a candidate. And I explained to them that they actually have their processes were socialists, and they didn't actually understand they were. So it gives an idea of their recruiting, I guess.
Yeah, to be honest, if a political party doesn't know what a woman is,
no, correct.
Yeah, how can you trust them on the science about climate change or anything else for that matter? Because if you're going to lie about something so basic, right, and so obvious that everybody knows the answer to, then I can't trust anything that you say.
I thoroughly agree. And
Totally.
what we were talking about before with domestic violence, the lies in domestic violence, if we actually truly cared, and a lot of us do, guess where we'd be? The first place we'd be in Aboriginal communities.
I can tell you right now, one of the things that's even broader than that is weaponisation of children.
Oh,
so that isn't even come into that situation. That's even more extreme. But I have a feeling, for me, if you are using your children as a tool of revenge and to manipulate the end of a marriage, you need to go put yourself in check and probably get some counselling and start from there. And if you can't sort yourself out, that's up to you. But don't do that to your children.
The welfare of the children should be paramount.
Absolutely. That's number one. Absolutely.
But the fundamental issue is, and this is very much politics, the major law firms in Western Australia fund both of the major parties. So the fact of the matter is they make very large donations to both parties, very, very similar amounts for, it's quote, that's what it is. So very, very simple. That's how the system works. And that's why you won't see any great changes in these systems, because quite frankly, these people are funding Liberal and Labor. But it's just
we're going to move on.
Because I do want to represent these gentlemen. They've got a great efforts to put these questions.
We do, but can we do another one with someone else?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think that we've got some people that are calling in to be interviewed as well. So I think that will be great. Sophia, all I can say is good luck. I know that there are many people that are grateful for how much you've already represented them in the upper house. And with the work that you've already done, I hope you get the opportunity to continue and do some more amazing work.
That would be amazing.
Thank you for joining us on the Edge Radio Couch.
Thank you for tuning in, everyone.
Thanks. Okay, so I think we might be having a guest that's going to be calling in. So I'm just wondering if they're in the back channels. Who are we talking to next, Mr. Maloney?
Let's go to Ryan, perhaps. So I'll just
put
Ryan in, if we may. Great.
So we're going to be talking to Ryan Burns, who is a libertarian. He's living down in Mandurah, and he's also actually running in the state election. So Ryan, I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
I can. Can you hear me?
I certainly can, Ryan. How are you doing? How are you?
Look, it's like a lot of candidates. I imagine we're tired, but unlike a lot of candidates, I don't want it over by 6 p.m. I need a couple more months because I'm getting such great feedback. We just need more time to get our name out there and what we stand for, because every time people are exposed to us for the first time, we're getting some great feedback. So,
Ryan, I think you hit the nail on the head, because talking about time to prepare, again, this is talking about the imbalance of power, how the parties that have big funding and availability to have all that, as opposed to independents and minor parties, it's really stacked against them to be able to get their ducks in a row with a lot more time in preparation, just as you've said, to be able to get the voices out there and a lot more support. What would be your feedback about ways that you think could improve that to make sure there's a bit more balanced perspective of it, Ryan?
Well, front of mine is I managed to get onto 6PR as I think they call it Anything Goes Friday, and it was polite and professional, but in effect it could have been interpreted as a bit of some honest feedback on our frustration of seemingly a mainstream media blockout of the minor parties and independents. I get while who forms government is the main story, almost equally is who will hold the balance of power in the upper house. And correct. My feeling and reading the tea leaves and being on booth intermittently across Mandurah and the region and getting feedback from our guys in Perth and in the regions is there is going to be a swing away from Labor, but it's where that swing will land, and that's not being reported on. So it's no good ruling the roost in the lower house and having, the numbers there if you're a dead duck in the upper house, and that's a story that's not being reported. And I think that overarching trend of people moving away from major parties, it was 70, 80 years ago, over 90% of people voted either Liberal or Labor. 20, 30 years ago, it might have been 40 on the left, 40 on the right, and elections were won by the 20 in the middle. We've seen recently, it's practically a third, and a third, and that trend is continuing. So, look, call me a conspiracy theorist. It's so frustrating that they're not reporting on us.
No, I don't think it's not even conspiracy. You just know it's a media blackout, just like you've said before. They don't want to focus on that because basically a lot of their funding comes from organisations on both different wings of the same bird, the uni party, that basically all their funding come from that. So they don't want that promoted because it wants to talk about just the two options instead of looking at the disbursement or the range of issues and opinions that aren't being addressed by those two major parties. I think you've nailed it there, Ryan.
Yeah, and it's easy for us to give, even as a minor party or an independent, our rhetoric, but this is what I genuinely am experiencing on the ground, that people they've had a guts full of the major parties, and for good reason.
Yeah. So Ryan, I'm going to have a bit of, I don't know if you heard me speak to Sophia Momond about, I was recently told in Canberra that basically we should just be sticking to the two major parties and that everyone needs to get on board and choose a side, and that's what it be. Do you feel that you've just identified the kind of spectrum that I was talking about before with Sophia, about that there needs to be a complete change of the way that the platform is? What would be other things that people would like to maybe know about when it comes to democracy? We've seen that there has been such a imbalance of power, and the uni party has taken all the power away from minor parties and independents. What were the things that you'd maybe like to see?
It's interesting that there are so many parallels between when we end up with monopolies and duopolies, and the same things playing out within the political sphere. So the rules are being increasingly written to suit the two majors. We've seen in the latest round of federal, they attacked the funding, so they looked at the TEALS as a model and put rules in place, not across the specifics, but just across the general nature of it, because of my focus has been this state campaign. But those set of rules seem to attack the TEAL model of funding and the Clive Palmer model of funding, but seem to leave the major parties alone. And we experienced that as a party 4 years ago. We were formerly known as the Liberal Democrats, and Liberal and Labor got together and changed the rules that forced a name change from Liberal Democrats to Libertarian. Now, in the long term, I think that'll suit us. We contested it, I think, to the High Court. I like the new name. It resonates very well with our members because we have always been a libertarian party, but it's tough getting that out there. So that's one of the things. I don't know how you could tackle that, but other than voting public know about it. But it's even important to get that diversity of viewpoint in the upper house. Purely, it's meant to be a house of review. But we've seen online censorship or censorship in general that is targeted at those alternative viewpoints. And I can see a time where ordinary Australians and Western Australians will be either self-censoring out of fear of prosecution or will actually be censored. So it's important to have those views in Parliament. So because they're not going to waive their parliamentary privilege or apply rules that constrict themselves. So that's another thing. So I think the public in general are waking up to it. The numbers are playing out, the challenges, and nature loves a void. And so we just need to, as miners, present ourselves as credible alternatives, which the Libertarians are to those major parties. So in our local area, in Western Australia, we will get to hold Labor to account, who've been arrogant and no consultation ran through legislation. So we will get to hold them to account if we're successful. And
you have my support for that one.
Yeah, and similarly, we would get to hold the mirror up to the Liberal Party, who like espousing classical liberal philosophies, but in practice, there's a big gulf between what they do and what they say. So we get to hold the mirror up to them. And I don't want this taken out of context, but the Greens, we don't agree on much with the Greens, but they have proven somewhat successfully to be that agitator, that 10% party that arguably has pulled Labor across to the left and similarly to the Liberals. So I think there was an article in The Light written by Libertarian John Ruddick that said that the time is prime for a minor right party or a centre-right minor party to take that position up. And we can see some jostling play out, particularly at a federal level.
Yeah.
But importantly, there is scope, and I think Libertarians are leading in this space to work together, and that Australia First Alliance is an example of that. Again, that's at a federal level. My focus is the state, but obviously I can't. It's very interesting, and it is of interest to the people when I'm out and about. So I'm obliged to be on top of it to a degree.
Sure. So Ryan, has anyone got any question or a question they'd like to ask Ryan? Maybe what are one of the major points that you'd like to say that most people may not know about what you're passionate about, other than what you might have discussed, but something that gives them insight to who you are, Ryan, and what what drives you in your passion?
Well, there are two things when it comes to politics that I really despise, and that's careerists and carpetbaggers. And the careerist carpetbagger, I'll get to that one first. That's an American term, but in principle, we should be represented in our constituency by those from it, and that's where we're best represented. So I don't really like, particularly when the major parties helicopter someone in, one of their careerists or someone from outside, and then obviously the careerists. So on the left side, they might come up through the union. More often now, they'll study law and politics at uni, become a staffer, work inside the tent, and then they jostle for that key position at in a safe seat. And then they're the ones in the safe seats that end up getting to be ministers in those portfolios. So I heard it said just the other day, and that's really interesting, is that these careerists that jostle and play the games politically are the ones who end up in those safe seats and taking ministerial positions and have no real world experience.
Totally. They've gone from high school to university into public service and staying in this very controlled dynamics where they have blinkers on and they're conditioned to think, act, and do a certain way.
So 5 years ago, I'd never even considered taking a role in politics as a candidate or even being elected. I'm a local government councillor down here in Mandurah. I hadn't even conceived of it. So I feel I've got some very, very strong practical experience. I'm an engineer. I studied out in Kalgoorlie. I'm a regional boy. I grew up in Boyup and Mandurah when it was a small town. I think so. When I was drifting in and out, Sophia touched on, and I won't expand on it, that potentially the future lack of regional representation. But I worked underground as a miner. I was trained as an air leg miner. I've done literally back-breaking work before a boss wisely told me to pivot and be an engineer. And so through that, I've managed some high-risk jobs, high-responsibility jobs around the world. And that, I think, positions me better. And again, I don't fit that category. My most despised category is careerist in politics.
I think we can agree with you there. People that don't have any applicable life experience aren't going to be people that have balanced perspective on how real life actually works. So Ryan, thank you. I just wanted to see, is anyone else got a question? Yes, we do here. Yeah.
What is the most compelling reason people would turn to the Libertarian Party in selection?
So I don't think you heard that. Was what is the most compelling reason that people should turn and support the Libertarian Party and yourself, Ryan? What are your policy basis or your format that you'd like to get across to people the most, what you stand for?
Well, the Libertarian Party I know is a very principled, purist party, and that's of the philosophy libertarianism. So that is the fundamental position that we know what's best for us, as long as we don't cause, and we should be free to follow that and pursue our dreams and aspirations, as long as we don't cause harm for others. So that's what's compelling. If you value freedom, if you value our traditional way of life, then you'd be rest assured very comfortable to know what position we would take on most issues, and that is simply no loss of freedom and no increase in taxes.
So certainly stepping back from the authoritarian thing that we've had a good demonstration over the last 4 years, for sure, Ryan.
I think it's a badge of honor. I just recently, Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum named libertarians as the biggest threat to their agenda. That's quite a feather in our cap, I think.
I'm glad you've got Schwabby on the run. Thanks, Ryan, for joining us tonight. Good luck.
Excellent.
And I'll see you out there in the trenches. I know that you were a big supporter of stopping the offshore wind in Mandurah, as well as all throughout WA. So thank you for your support also in that.
Oh, that's a no-brainer, easy. They're the easy positions to take.
Yeah, well, it wasn't that easy over in Canberra, I can tell you right now. We went through the Minster for 3 days.
Well, I'm sure you're stronger and more informed for it. So hats off for you anyway for the attempt.
I certainly armed up. I had the opportunity to meet with Peter Dutton's office. So that was direct to the top there. That was great. An opportunity to hit some hard questions across the table that they certainly weren't expecting.
Well, what do they expect? That are the ones who signed us up to Paris. They're the ones who doubled down on net zero, and now they're surprised that wind farms are popping up all over the place. I mean, please. Exactly.
I remind them of that all the time. Thank you, Ryan. All the best. I hope you do really well in the election. And again, thank you and for people tuning in and listening to what Ryan has to say.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. I've enjoyed it.
Thanks. Now we are going to have a new guest come in. He's in the studio here. He's running also as an independent in Group M. We've got Adrian Perot. My apologies. Adrian Perot. How you doing, Adrian?
Yeah, not bad.
Good to hear. We had a bit of a chat before we went live. Adrian sort of arrived just sort of a little bit before everyone else because of the crazy traffic as we get on Friday afternoons here in Perth. Adrian, how has it been so far as a bit of a baptism of fire getting into this whole crazy race?
Well, that's probably a nice way to put it. Going from slow life to life in the fast lane over the last 2 weeks, not getting a lot of sleep. It's been interesting. Met a lot of very interesting people you wouldn't have expected to meet.
Yeah, and so in that, what would you share in this journey of rapid learning and getting your head around what it is if you're running for the state government and in the upper house?
I think a lot of people are just really angry with how the last 4 years have gone.
Mm.
They're really, really, really angry, and doing a lot of pre-polls over the last almost 2 weeks. The amount of people that are coming up that are really agitated and want change is quite astounding.
Wow, you are hearing the same stories that I am, Adrian. So I'm seeing that. So what areas are you predominantly going and pre-polling in your
Well,
hometown?
right now, yeah, Australind is the main one I've been at.
Yep.
So because I live down south,
Yep.
so Australind, Bunbury.
Perfect. That's my old stomping ground. Hello, my Australian Pete and Bunbury. Big love to you. So I think there is such a shift. I mean, Ryan acknowledged that. Even Sophia has acknowledged that there is a rapid change that's gone on. I think that almost the shock and trauma and the journey that we've gone through over the last 4 years, people never want to go back to that. Well, most people don't. There are some people who think that Dictator Dan and McClown have done a great job. However, I definitely don't agree with that. And I think that that's compounded this anger that we're seeing now. Do you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of people just are very entrenched in what they are. They are a Labor voter, therefore they will vote Labor their whole life.
Yeah.
Same as Liberal their whole life. You know, I was born to this type of family. I'm just going to stick at it forever, no matter what the consequences.
Ideology.
But a lot of people are actually starting to realise that it's not the wonderful world that they were promised.
Yes, right.
And I think the big parties have left their roots. They're not focusing on people anymore, and that's one of the reasons I decided to do this. Is I'm just a retail worker, and all I see is lawyers and business uni people that think they know it all, but have no idea what it's like to be alive as an average person
and connect with people every day, like we're talking about, Ryan. That's the thing. It's like, oh, you nailed it. So I have been saying, and I've posted nonstop in the last 24 hours, that the disconnect between those in the marble palace, as I call it, because that's the only thing I could say that's nice enough to represent what our capital should be. It should be a place where everyday people are welcome. And now going into Parliament House, I went in there 18 years ago, and comparing it to now, it feels like entering a prison. And the amount of security that's there. And I understand that we do need security, but there's nothing warm, fuzzy and inviting about it. And it doesn't represent the people in the way that it should.
No, people don't trust politicians. They're used to them promising everything and delivering very little. Or
even when there's a whole due process that we've just gone through where Senator Ross Cadell put forward an inquiry. There's all the crossbenchers that came in and voted for that. It moved ahead. We had an inquiry set, and then it fell to pieces because the Labor and Greens didn't want it to go ahead because it's going to look bad. This is the kind of abuse of power that people are angry about.
Yeah, well, they're focusing on their careers and not on the people. So they're focusing on their jobs. And that's the bit that everybody hates. I mean, everybody knows, well, politicians are one of the least trusted professions in the world. And there's a reason for that. It's pretty obvious.
Yes, well, there are some people that I can say that I do feel that have acted admirably.
That word.
This is just juice, by the way. This is not even martinis right now. So they have acted in an honourable way and have represented the people. But then they only get it to a certain point because then there's this massive stonewalling and pushback from those that have been fully infiltrated is what I look like.
Yeah, well, the big parties, they just vote in blocks.
Yeah.
The people that aren't, don't hold a ministerial seat.
Yeah.
They just do as they're told. They just vote. And that means they're not representing the people.
Yeah.
They're sitting there taking money from the taxpayer and not actually, talking about what the people need.
Yeah. Is there any particular area that you're finding that people are most angry about, or a couple of areas, whether it's health or the state of the fact that we have lost a sense of independence or freedom, like kind of Ryan was talking about? Is it certain things that they talk about, or just in general they're angry?
Well, down south, housing is a big problem.
Oh, yeah.
No one has any.
I know that one.
Yeah, and like even just finding work. Everyone has casual and part-time jobs. There's nearly very few full-time jobs. Yeah. That's a really big one. And then when they decided to pass laws where, you had to do as we tell you to do, or you can't work. Yeah. In other words, take a jab.
Yeah.
Or don't have a job.
Mm-hmm.
That was a line that a lot of people didn't like. got a bit fired up over.
Yeah, and you've just touched on something I've talked about before and we had that in the one thing, one of the segments that I was a guest speaker on, and it's about healing and coming back into how do we bridge the gap between what happened and healing and moving through and navigating through that. We have not. So if all of those people that are out there delusional that you've got on with your life, that might be great for you, but there is a huge portion of unhoused working families and individuals that cannot find any source of housing. I'm one of those, just so you know.
Yep.
So I live in a caravan because I cannot get a rental property because it's way too high and outside of my availability. Living with strangers, you know, there you go. So I'm not embarrassed to say that. Why should I? I blame this whole Labor and the dictatorship that happened. So these things make us stronger, Adrian. And I think that this is where we have great compassion.
Yeah, well, that shapes us. When you work in retail, you get to see what people they're suffering, and they're trying to find the cheapest thing just so they can get a meal one day.
Yeah.
And when you see that all the time, you sort of realise that something's not working.
Yeah.
So I figured that's why I'm going to do this, is because the average person's not being heard. They're all corporate people.
Yeah.
And they're just not listening.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's something that we have a lot in common with what you've talked about. So moving forward from that, for you, what do you think that you would like to see as a representative of the people that have spoken to you? What are the things that you would like to see either changed in state and federal government that would better represent them or look after the people?
I would like to see the upper house be at least locked down to no more than a third, 30%.
Yeah.
Any party, doesn't matter which party, minimum 30%. I know. I also want to see a proper Royal Commission in COVID.
Yeah.
And the Emergencies Act, because they crossed the line when they said you can't hold a job and you can't pay a mortgage.
That's correct.
And there are a lot of people that did something. I mean, it's meant to be my body, my choice, unless it's a needle. And
it's unconstitutional because
it is.
One of the things is that you can't. It's medical apartheid is what it was, and it's also talking about that there was a medical experiment used, as I see it. That's my opinion only. That a medical experiment was used on the people, and they never gave informed consent.
Oh, the immunisation handbook says that, and then.
That's crimes against humanity.
Yeah. And when you read it, I said, you ask a doctor, have you read it? And they go, yes, we're not jabbing you.
Yeah.
Because they know the consequences of breaking that rule. So they just didn't follow those rules.
Bravo.
Right through.
I'm with you on
so
that.
So there's a lot of people that are going to get in trouble if it's properly investigated.
And
it's going to be fun for a lot of the people who were hurt, because it's just something that they just need to have done. But the people that did the wrong thing, from right up the chief medical health officers all the way down, it's not going to be fun for them.
No, I was one of the people in 2021 that was serving cease and desist orders to doctors and pharmacists in Australand and Bunbury. So, I warned them about Nuremberg 2.0 because that is a real thing that I can see, and I can see it starting to form the foundation for that to move ahead now.
Yeah, the amount of complaints just on those drugs alone outdo all other vaccinations by a mile.
I just know too many people that have passed away. The bell curve that we were talking about, the bell curve has moved.
18% over expected death rate so far in WA.
It breaks my heart. I think we have another question from Mr. Malloy. Short one, to the point, please.
I don't do that. Have you met me? I can talk underwater. Look, I will try and do this, and I just want to go through this letter as much as I can and offer as many questions as I can, because if these people have gone to such effort, I want to represent them. It's really important.
But we do need to keep kind of the question specific.
We do. Yeah. This is a very different subject, but this is back to what we were talking about before as far as prisoners. Now, it's been well publicised, the drop in condition for prisoners, and basically the bunking up of all of these different cells. Far more people are in there than actually what they were designed for. Mm. Now, the conditions for prisoners have had a steep decline, rather. And the last independent review, according to this documentation, is 2012. What are your thoughts about that? If you were elected and you're in a position where policy came from the lower house coming through, where would your stance be?
Haven't really looked at that one before.
We like to throw the curveball.
There's a curve one.
Like, I think there are a lot of people in there that may or not have to be there.
Yes.
I do think there's an injustice in the system, You know, you get a lot of, especially blokes. You go, there's women's shelters everywhere. How many men's shelters are there?
There's one in Australia.
One. Yeah, that's
in,
brilliant. One.
Parramatta, New South Wales.
Yeah, that's not going to help me. So there's clearly a difference.
Disproportion.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
so that's the way that the legal system's obviously working. When laws are written by lawyers for the sake of lawyers,
Yes.
and that's why they like calling, the grey bit. They like doing all the stuff in the middle so lawyers can get busy. Laws should be written very black and white, or a lot more black and white than they are, a lot less grey, so that, spending 5 years in court, it's ridiculous.
It's also policies are also behind the people that write the policies, write for agendas of the people that actually pay for it. And this is where we see that destroying families.
Well, the loudest people are the ones that do all the damage.
That's correct.
If they yell and scream like they're blue murder, chances are they're not really talking for people. They're talking for themselves.
Well, that sort of, it kind of links into another one of the questions. And again, I'll sort of try and bring this into something a little bit more succinct. The issue of these lobbyists, okay, and the power they have with government. If you're approached by lobbyists, what kind of mindset are you going in with?
Well, I'm going a little bit different. I think politicians get paid more than enough. The fact that they earn whatever they're earning and suddenly have a portfolio of millions of dollars, something Mr. Trump's looking into, which I actually agree with. You shouldn't be able.
We want Doge. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
we want Doge.
Yeah.
I've got Tourette's now. Doge.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it shouldn't be, money should not buy the right decision.
Yeah.
And you can clearly see that money affects the decisions of a lot of politicians.
Very interesting to bring up that point. As I look down at the page, it actually shows these massive gaps in the socio-economic standards of people, and those who are incarcerated and those who aren't. There seems to be a dollar value involved in that.
Absolutely.
There's like that in almost every department that government has. Not a huge fan about lots of government departments. But
Well,
so clearly they're money driven and not family driven. Like adoption's too hard in Australia.
It is.
And it's too easy to take kids and keep them in the system for so long. And there's families out there that want to adopt and can't. That's not fair on the child, let alone the people who want to adopt a child and have a family.
Well, it should be child focused.
It should be child focused, and it's not.
Yeah, I think we've come away from families and making sure that our children are safe. Period. I think we're probably on the same page about that one. We've seen a lot of things that have come up, probably in the truth community, about child labour, trade. I'm going to be very mindful of what I'm using in our language right now, but I think we know we're on the same page here.
Yep.
The way that we treat our children and we value families and connection has been completely lost, and that's all by design to degrade us.
The nuclear family has been destroyed. It used to say a village to raise a child.
Yeah.
Well, now it's a school to raise a child because you've got to have two incomes.
Yeah.
Which means there's no parents at home, and the kids are being raised by other people, not the parents.
Yeah.
And I'm not a huge fan of that. I've never used daycare.
Yeah.
And yet I pay taxes that pay for everybody else who wants to use daycare.
Yeah, even daycare is so extraordinarily expensive now. Like people can't even afford it.
Yeah, but the people that just choose to have a stay-at-home parent and make that sacrifice to do that, they've got to pay. They're paying daycare fees for the people that have two incomes.
We pay taxes that other people use for them and not us all the time.
Yeah, it does.
Don't even get me on taxes. God, we'll be here for hours.
I like Houston's GST.
It's like, I think we need to abolish a lot of taxes. We're the most overtaxed nation on the planet, and people say, "No, we're not." I'm like, have you done the research?
It's about 70% of your money.
Yeah, 70% of
give
your.
or take. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I'll butt in from the side again. If you actually take all the tariffs and taxes and everything, this was done about 20 years ago, this study, all of the taxes and excise and all the different levels of taxation, guess how much out of every $1 you actually retain?
No more than about 25-30%.
No, 7 cents.
Oh, that's right.
That's 20 years ago. So
that just hurt.
I actually stood forward just to ask you a question on a front now. Look, doing my research on you, I believe you have 8 children.
Yes.
First and foremost,
yeah.
well done. Well done. No, that's
I feel for the females, but that's fine too.
I had 6, feeling pretty good, feeling a little beaten right now. But that's what I wanted to say is one thing. Congratulations on in a era where it's so hard to have a big family. It's a wonderful thing.
And to do that with one income took sacrifice from both me and the mum.
Totally.
That's great to
Right,
hear.
because
Yeah.
it's a sacrifice for everyone. You have a choice, money or family.
Yep.
Yes.
So we chose family.
Yes.
Well, that's actually
for
where I was
you.
going. So very clearly, you're a family man.
Yep.
And your faith is important to you.
Yep.
I think that's something that a lot of people who will be out there voting will consider. So I want to make sure that people are aware of that.
Cool.
Good for you, Adrian. Look, this has been a wonderful chat. And knowing that you're down in the Australian Bunbury area, looking after some good people down there that I know, I'm sure
Trying to.
I'm sure that you're coming across a lot of people down there that we would know in common. So anyone that's out there watching us, and you go and meet Adrian, go say hello.
I'll be
Good
at
hunt.
Eton tomorrow.
You'll be at Eton tomorrow. There
Eton
you
High
go.
School, Eton Community College.
Eton Community College tomorrow. Go say hello to Adrian. Thanks so much for coming and joining us on the Crazy Edge Radio chat.
Thanks for the invite.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're heading on.
Just before we do,
Oh, yes.
sorry, just to jump in for a
Yes,
moment.
Mr. Malloy.
Well,
Why don't you come sit down next to me? You may as well. Come on. Yeah.
You could knock me down with a feather. Me or him?
You.
Oh,
Come on.
look, why not?
Let's
Jeez.
go.
You could knock me down with a feather with this one. Guess what's happened today, the day before an election? We've had restrictions on Edge Radio Australia through social media. Now, isn't that interesting? Very interesting. Comments, by the way, which are normally coming in, and the numbers and so forth, are not happening. Now, what's really interesting about this is at the last election, guess what happened the day before?
Wow.
The exact same thing. So if you are not aware of how mainstream media works and their association with the
shadow
government,
banning. What?
it is
Us get
absolutely
shadow
ridiculous.
banned?
Can you imagine it? Look at that. But anyway, what I want to do is, look, it's a positive thing. It's actually a positive thing. Because if they weren't fearful of what we're doing, if they weren't fearful of the wonderful voices of these independents, they wouldn't be doing it.
And our posts as well. Like, we do like to stir the pot a bit.
A little bit, because it's
We've
hubble
got some
bubble.
big spoons.
That's right. But yeah, no, so very, very positive on that front. So what I want to ask people to do is if they could send in some emails, okay, with questions, and we'd love to share it with our guests in the next, basically a few hours. It'd be great if we get straight to you very quickly. The printer's going to be running hot. But let's do that. So if you want to send an email into, it's info@edgeradioaustralia.com. That's very, very simple. A lot of people will be listening. No. Just there we go. I've been here a while. I reckon I might know the
He's
email
a
address.
professional.
Who knows? Oh, there you go. No, look, edgeradioaustralia.com is where you can listen to great music, interviews, all sorts of goodies all the time. But if you want to get in touch, info@edgeradioaustralia.com. But I do find it very interesting that the fact is we just today happens to be the day that we got the magic, the big cross on us. So
Well, I can guarantee you that I know that anything that's probably got the names of those that went against the inquiry commission. Because what I said, people don't understand what quite happened. So we turned up for the inquiry and it got cancelled by Senator Hanson Young. Again,
how many times can you say that? Senator
Hanson Young
of the
Go send
Greens.
us some love. Tell her love from WA, the offshore wind turbine people. And anyway, so what happened is that we turned up. I rang her office on Tuesday afternoon about 4:30, and no one would answer my call.
Okay.
Shocked again.
I am shocked. I can't believe
And
it.
so then the next morning by 8:30, it had all been called off officially.
Okay.
So you're telling me that Tuesday afternoon they didn't know, but Wednesday morning overnight somehow they'd had a powwow and worked out we're cancelling it, even though you're in Canberra and all the other individuals that were representing in the hearing to speak.
Yep.
They cancelled on us.
Look, this is not new for how the government works. Everybody knows the work that I do in, basically trying to bring some fairness and some love of children, support of children through what goes on to family court. So I was part of the family court Senate inquiry, the federal one. And it's really interesting just on the fact of how they play the game.
Yeah.
Right? The fact that they say that our opinions are heard and important and there's consultation is an utter lie. So with my case, I put in a massive submission with all the details under the sun. I put two versions because I know about Section 121 of the Family Law Court Act, and I knew they'd want to play games. So I put in one that was a full version and one that had all the names redacted. Big black marks all through it. Okay. And they said, "Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, look, we can't use yours." We first and foremost, I was supposed to go there, and they took back the invitation for me to physically be there. So then they said it had to be in writing only. So I did that. And then they said that, I'm sorry, no. Because of Section 121, we can't use yours because it names people. I said, well, hang on. Just check the next page because you've actually got both copies. They just lie. This is a very, very constant thing. And this seems to happen in all the Senate inquiries. So I just think, we need to be aware of this. The thing we need before anything else is transparency.
Yeah. So in transparency, what happened was that Senator Ross Cadell was so upset that we had all turned up. We crowdfunded, got to Canberra, and been stonewalled and shut down, that they did a bit of a coup d'etat.
Nice.
Bravo to you, because that's what I love doing. It's like, well, there's a curveball and I'll just round that one. So we had our own informal hearing ourselves where we went into the actual inquiry chamber. Okay. So we had that and it was covered on Sky News. So as far as mainstream media goes, they were very transparent about the whole process.
What a shame, though, you have to buy a subscription to actually get access to the truth.
Yeah.
Imagine if the big players out there actually tell the truth. Anyway, that's enough from me. I'm going to get out of here. But,
okay.
It's lovely to see
Don't go out of here. Just leave the lounge. Get behind there.
And which speaker would you like to speak to
I think we've got Tony. He's going to come in for a chat. Okay, I think we're going to be pressing now to Tony Ball, who is an independent, going to be running with actually Group M again. So we have Tony, who's up in Kalgoorlie. I think you are right now, aren't you, Tony?
Yeah, I'm just outside of Kalgoorlie at the moment, in where my house is in Coolgardie, but I'm living in Kalgoorlie because I got married 8 months ago today to my lovely wife Natalie, and this is one of the reasons I'm running. She's a school teacher, and with things like no jab, no play, or no jab, no pay, the incessant thing about jabs and everything over the last 4 years, and the way that people have been treated over the last few years, which interestingly enough, Roger Cook was supposed to be in Kalgoorlie yesterday for pre-polling, and he didn't turn up because someone let him know I was going to ask him a question. What number booster was he up to? You know, being the Chief Health Officer of Western Australia, he should be on number 10 or 11 at the moment.
Yeah, I think he's probably getting his triple booster shot every time, so he could be up to 21.
Yep.
I'm thinking.
But he chose not to turn up.
Oh, it's not like someone from Labor to be running away from hard questions and direction and directive questions and transparency. I don't understand why he'd be running away from those questions. Would you, Tony?
And it was just like the rest of the Labor crew there when they started getting a little bit narky. They're probably the only ones that were getting a little narky. It was, and what booster are you up to? Oh, you're not taking it. So you're an anti-vaxxer now, are you?
Yeah, wow.
And they were. But to me, I was in the health and fitness industry for a very, very long time before I suffered a traumatic brain injury. I've been trying to help people create a healthy lifestyle, not a diet, because diet starts with die. Healthy lifestyle starts with heal thyself.
You're right.
And the more healthy people we have, the less we have to use on the sickness. I mean, the health industry.
Yeah. Unfortunately, our health and medical industry is completely overwhelmed at the moment, and we can see that, again, that bell curve has really widened out because, as Adrian was just talking about, and Sophia has also talked about, that there has been so many people that have had adverse reactions and now having such declining health issues that we're seeing so many people have to admit to hospital and for long-term and ongoing management.
Oh. Well, even this new system the Labor government forced on us just to get our independent ticket, I literally spent 3 weeks out in 40, 45-degree heat knocking on doors and listening to people's stories. One of the ladies on a second shot, she ended up in Fiona Stanley for 5 weeks in a coma. I've watched my parents go through really unusual medical events, including my dad having 7 strokes, but it can't be the jab.
No, couldn't dare question something that hasn't been around. That all of a sudden there's been this massive change in Well, the one thing that I'm finding, and I'm hearing from people, Tony, is that there's all of these conditions that have never existed before.
Yes.
People are going, oh, they can't tell me what it even is, what this lung disease is, or what this skin disorder is, or what this problem is that I have, in my flesh, or there's all of these conditions now that actually have never existed before. So I'm hearing the same, and it's incredibly sad. What are the other issues, just like Adrian has been hearing, what other things that are you finding people are very concerned about or upset about?
The second most biggest thing that was talked about was the election bribery. Promises. In the goldfields, I've added up over the last several weeks, and it's we're nearly at $1 billion in the goldfields, including $160 million on a battery. And some mathematician worked it out that if Kalgoorlie went black for a minute, it would last about 22 minutes.
That's as good as the battery they're putting in that's going to give us 4 hours of backup.
And I mean, if we're going to talk about environmental, this huge battery, the 250 megawatt battery, how many resources, how many holes, how many materials have to come out of the ground to build such a thing?
Yeah, totally.
I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I'm not against supplementary power. I'm really scared about our Collie Power Station because I've heard that not all turbines, all the generators are going. There's a couple of ready to collapse, and there's only 2 main ones. What happens if they go?
Yeah.
We've got no backup, absolutely no backup. And Emperor McGowan a couple of years ago, because I've got 6.6 kilowatts on my house, I was a single guy on a pension, still on a pension. And so to me, it made sense to reduce my power bill. And then he changed it that he takes all the power I generate and I get to buy it back at a reduced price. So all the power I make during the day still costs me money.
Yeah, and this is where people are calling it the swindle and the scam because I'm all for renewables. I have no doubt that we have some kind of climate change happening. I have no issue that we need to address a whole bunch of things about our environment. But when we put precautionary measures completely out the window and we're not looking at long-term sustainable solutions, and that's what you're talking about.
Cheap, reliable energy so we can be empower people to help people thrive. I mean, you could say I've done 4 apprenticeships. I started out in the Air Force. I did my trade there. With the government being an armament fitter, I got out and did an apprenticeship humbly with my dad as a carpenter. So I learned how to blow things up and then I learned how to build them again.
That's some skill there, I can tell you now, Tony. Blow it up and put it back together.
Helped a couple of bad bills get paid on time. Let's put it that way.
So, Tony, talking about
trades in Australia have been swindled. There's not, for instance, my carpentry trade. People don't build from the stumps up to the roof anymore. You got stumpers, you got framers, you got floorers, you got roof plumbers, you've got people that do the shooting. It's been separated into so many little subgroups.
Yeah.
That people can't do a whole job anymore.
And it costs more money for those that are trying to get home.
Insurances, registrations, belonging to certain organisations so that you get the correct. It's all about registration and control.
Yeah.
Look at the new fire alarm laws in Western Australia this year. If you're not up to code, they can stop your business.
Yeah. God, it's crazy. It's gone out of control. The one thing that you did raise is about having base load and reliable energy. When we're talking about base load and reliable energy, that's essential for manufacturing and industry. And so this is another thing that you've touched upon. One of the people I spoke to in Canberra was talking about how we have lost our manufacturing and industry. And because of that, if we had more, we'd be drawing more energy off the grid. And we would need to have more base load energy. And what we've seen is that because they've got rid of this, we aren't seeing that there's this necessity to have this supply for heavy industry or manufacturing industry that's constant, that's used not just during the day, but sometimes during the night. or you're
Well, I
really
can say
seeing
it in the goldfields, the amount of places that have to invest in diesel generators,
Yeah,
it just makes the argument mute.
yeah,
I investigated it because people don't want to look at nuclear power. Now,
yeah.
I've been in the Defence Force, was 30-something years ago. I've seen nuclear submarines for a very long time. If they put one small self-contained nuclear reactor in the goldfields, it would supply up to Leonora, down to Norseman, out to Southern Cross for about the next 80 to 100 years.
Yeah.
And we're talking about something the size of a sea container.
Yeah, and seeing that it's not just uranium, but thorium can be used. There's also, cold fusion. There's a whole bunch of baseload energy that can be used in such a way. So I've done a lot of research into this. This is something that I'd really like to talk about in the future, or somehow have a forum on that. I've spoken to many
Why
people.
aren't we even investigating it? Why is it just a blunt, outright no?
Oh, it's not.
Net zero is false. It's an outright lie, and people are making lots of money out of it, and people are dying because they can't afford to put food on their table.
Yeah, net zero is based on the ideology that carbon is somehow a toxin or not wanted in our atmosphere, and that's 0.4.
Yes.
So what it is that it's treated like it's a toxin or a polluter in our atmosphere when it actually causes greening and cools the planet.
Mum had a nursery, and overnight she used to have CO2 going in the nursery.
Bravo. So I have had a few very frank chats to the Dutton Co. And I've said that, that we're going to be having some more discord about this. I'm not certainly putting the phone down at this point, because I think that it's very important to bring this conversation to the population, because it needs to be community and social driven, and that some solutions that are good for one area are not necessarily good for another and not wanted. And we cannot be looking at, again, as this blanket solution. I told them that ideology is the same as the same dictatorship that's coming from the Labor. So I made that very frank.
For instance, in the goldfields, they just built a $1 billion lithium battery plant that doesn't employ a lot of people in the goldfields, but they stripped out like 100 acres of land. It's changed the skyline of the goldfields. You come over 7 Mile Hill now, and the first thing you see is this plant with its chimney pumping out. And they go, oh, but it's got scrubbers. Well, they said the same thing about the roaster that used to be in Kalgoorlie, and then all of a sudden, 20 years later, they moved it 20 k's out of town.
So you're saying it's a lithium mine, or is it lithium battery?
It's a processing plant.
Oh, it's a lithium processing plant.
Yes.
Oh, right. Say no more. And there's
and it's on the side of town where the wind blows across the town.
Yeah. There's some highly toxic stuff that comes from it. That's another conversation we'll have to have at another juncture.
There is a question.
Yes. We've got a question here, Tony, from some of our audience. What we're going to cross to.
Oh, yeah. Is that the question? Do you believe?
No, I'm going to call it out. And I will
Okay.
just call out the question to you in a second, Tony. Sorry.
Do you want me to pull it down?
Yeah.
Do you believe that the division of trades has impacted the integrity and quality of work being offered today from Terry Messenger?
Okay, so the question is, do you believe that the division of those that are tradesmen that are working on the building industry has caused, what's the last part of that question? Has caused,
Impacted the workmanship.
has it impacted the quality of workmanship and the quality of building that we have in Western Australia that you see? Well, that's a
I
loaded
think that's
one.
a true statement. I was actually just having this conversation with someone this morning on the pole line, saying, go have a look at the houses my dad built 50, 60 years ago, and the roof line are still straight across, and the ones that are about 5 or 6 years old, they're bowing at the corners.
Wow.
They're not the quality's not the same. The type of materials aren't the same. But then I remember when I did my apprenticeship, when I got out in 95, I sent all my trade stuff from the Air Force into the Trades Board in Western Australia. They sent it all back and said, so what, have a 4-year apprenticeship? Now, I'm very thankful in hindsight that they did that, but I got to year 3 and John Howard decided to fast track apprenticeships and make them 2 years. Now I reckon we're seeing the outcome of that result now, because the master tradesmen now are the product of that last generation.
Yeah.
Now I'm not saying that they don't go in with the right ethic and the right hearts, but if you're not taught all the foundations right at the start and you don't know the whole job, it's going to impact your work.
Of course. Like it's like saying, you know, you've gone through a certain level, but you haven't got the solid foundation, so that as you're building it, you're refining those skills and how it's applied when you go out into the real industry and building homes and creating dwellings for people or for community to use, whether it be a community building.
In my trade, the building, I would say it's actually nothing against BGC and those type of companies, but it's lent itself into trying to supply the cheapest products they can to get the most work out that they can for the most reasonable price. Now, that used to be the case about 20 years ago when I built my house in Kwinana. I think I was one of the last to get a house and land package for less than 200 grand. Now it's hard to get a block of land that's 250 square meters for less than 200 grand.
Yeah.
But they reduced, for instance, the 3 mil glass was 2.7 mil. The products that went into a brick were reduced to the bare minimum of what it needed to go into building a house.
To keep it structurally sound. So not to have the maximum capacity so that we're aiming for this, but let's go down to the minimum.
You're not looking at 50, 60-year houses. You're looking at 20, 25-year houses before they need to be replaced.
Geez, that's not good enough. Again, we're talking about, we have got measures that are not looking long-term at all for planning, and to look at if we're building strong communities, strong homes that don't need to be upgraded or all the time.
And people can't afford it in the first place.
No. Trying to get a builder right now. I've had friends that are saying that they just want to get a bathroom renovated, and they do have to take some structural walls down to have it done. But they're looking at $70,000 to $95,000 for a bathroom, and I'm like, is it gold plated? I'm just checking, because they're like, no.
Well, that made me question one of the promises from one of the parties here in Kalgoorlie about building two transgender ablution blocks that were going to cost $2 million, and I was like, I know somebody that got a ablution block built for the Kangas Footy Club in Kalgoorlie, and it cost $33,500. Where does $2 million come from for two?
I don't have words for that, to be honest.
It just
crickets.
Yeah.
I think we've got a question for you, Tony.
Yep.
No, actually, this wasn't for Tony specifically. I'm just preparing for when we get everyone on the couch. We've got a few questions that come through, and I just want to ask everybody.
All right. Is there any more questions that we'd like to put to Tony? Tony, is there something you'd like to tell the people about yourself that you're passionate about, and why you're running in the state election?
I'm passionate about people that know me for especially the last 20 years. I have been in the health and wellness industry. My biggest quality is trying to help people become their best version and help them to do something they can't do it at home. And I just finished a 400-kilometre bike event to raise money for Police Legacy. People were telling me, but you got election stuff going on and everything else. My integrity is high. I'm in the veterans and first response community. I've lost mates because I don't have the services I need. So health to me is more than paramount. My brain injury, if I hadn't had health and fitness background, I probably wouldn't be here today. So my faith in God and what he's provided for me, and him challenging me to enter this race so people can see good people standing again. So if I can say one last thing, is empowering people means giving people back their responsibility.
Yeah.
When they make their choices, it also comes with their consequences, but less governing. Aren't they supposed to be public servants?
Yeah.
Government's supposed to be about serving the people, less
Yes.
governance, and helping to empower them or support them to achieve and thrive.
Fabulous, Tony. I wish you all the best this weekend. I hear your passion and how much, and I'm so glad that you're out in beautiful Kalgoorlie and Coolgardie, that whole area, because they need strong people with great life experience that they can relate to. So I wish you all the best, and thank you for joining us tonight on Edge Radio Australia.
I'm very humbled that I was invited in. I really, really appreciate that, and thank you for allowing me some time.
Pleasure. So we did invite a number of other people to join us, either via a video link up or to come into the studio. Just so people know, we did invite minor parties and other independents. There's some that couldn't, unfortunately. So we just want to make sure that we tried to put the net out, or the invitation out, to as many people as possible, so that they could come and participate and share probably a bit of a deeper conversation, instead of just a political viewpoint or just sharing their policies tonight. So I think we've got some people who are going to join us back on the couch.
Ask our guests back on the couch.
Let's do that. We're going to have to squish up a bit. Are we all still on camera? I hope so.
hope so.
Come on across here. So I think we might have a few too many cushions, but that's all right.
It's comfortable.
That's where it goes. So, what are we talking about, Mr. Malone? What would you like to
So
discuss?
the questions that have come in,
Yep.
again, I will try and just get them nice and tight.
Yep.
I know we're running very short of time, so I'm going to actually go with just on the first two questions, keep it really simple, one-word answers. Here we go. So let's just go with the first one. COVID inquiry.
Yes, need one.
Yes.
That's a two
Look at
thumbs
that.
up.
Politician use fast.
Yes.
There we
Yes.
go. Only teasing.
Yes.
And that's the answer we want. Absolutely.
Yep.
And I think that's the great thing that so many West Australians want. So many Australians, so many people of the world want.
A real one.
A real
Yes.
one. Exactly right. Fantastic. So the wind
We've got
turbines.
poltergeists.
Just in case we look a bit dark.
The wind
Wait a minute.
turbine.
The
The
light
wind turbine.
goes
did it.
out.
And lights.
Yes.
The wind turbine did it.
I will mention that these were made in the same place as wind turbines. They are made in China. All right. So the lighting's gone. So
But there's nothing fractured. It hasn't caused any disbursement or
No.
toxins or blade fragments. Just the same.
yeah, because that's normally part of it.
That's
Right?
what happens.
I'm looking for dead whales right now.
Oh,
There we go. It is that so
You're
horrible.
gonna
It
trigger
is.
me.
And, yeah.
I'm sorry. So how do we feel about wind turbines?
I think they are a big wealth transfer exercise. They don't help the environment, and we need to find better solutions than wind turbines to get our energy from.
I like the little ones that pump water from farms.
Yeah.
That's a windmill.
No,
Oh, that's close enough.
there,
Bravo. We'll go back to windmills.
there we go. Well, let's get away from calling those things windmills, because
Yeah.
they are not windmills.
No, they're
Exactly
not.
right.
Trump, you've got a lot to answer for that, mate. I'm telling you now. Calling them windmills.
Oh, he's not exactly
It's
elephant.
too much wind on the coast. We don't need extra.
No, we don't. Messes my hair up. Okay, how do we feel about the housing crisis?
Okay, what I want to see in Western Australia. Wow.
It's all right.
We
That
definitely
was
have poltergeists.
very, yes, the light just fell over again. But anyway, what I would like to see in Western Australia is that we develop a really strong hemp industry where we start making our houses from hempcrete in particular. The hempcrete is fire resistant, and you can grow your own hemp house in about 3 to 4 months on a hectare of land. And I don't know why we're not doing that yet.
Because they don't want to deregulate the industrial hemp.
Yeah.
Nah. Oh, but wait a sec. Did you see that they've backtracked now, Labor, and they want to go to biofuels with canola of all things,
We
not hemp that's sustainable and
We
heals the
can, we
planet.
can make it from hemp.
Sure, we
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
I was just like, I saw that this morning. Went,
They've worked out canola
Someone's-
shouldn't be in our food, so they're going to burn it instead.
Yeah. So we can breathe in the fumes. Yeah, that sounds good.
breathe in that GMO. Love it.
Okay, I'm not sure about building the houses out of hemp, but there we go.
No, hempcrete's
Hempcrete.
amazing. It's burn proof. Yeah, it doesn't burn.
Yeah.
So when it's applicable, especially in Australia, the regions that are prone to wildfires,
Yeah.
that's one of the safest homes that you could have is to have a hemp
What a
free
perfect
home.
example of look. Honestly, I didn't
We're on
know
the
that.
same page with this one. I'm
Yeah,
telling
no,
you
but
now,
that's
I'm
the
all
great thing.
for it. I'm all
Imagine if
in.
in life we could have open conversations and learn from each other. Look at that.
I think in the really short term too, there are a lot of farmers and places that are happy to set up little like mini home caravan parks that are
Mhm.
temporary,
Right.
and that's being stopped by councils and whatnot. So there's lots of little things we can do for the short term while they're building up the big houses. Because
You've opened-
sleeping in
yeah.
tents
Yeah.
is just
Yeah.
not on the national parks; they're everywhere.
Agreed. We've opened a little Pandora's box on that from the point of view of councils. Now, councils have very much become just the green rooms, the waiting room to get into state and federal politics.
Yeah.
Do you think there should be measures to stop that?
Yeah.
Well, they have their purpose, but they're overstepping their boundaries too far. I think
Yeah.
a lot of councils they're making too hard of rules and they're making it too hard to do things.
Yeah.
They're slowing down building houses. All the red tape, all the bits and pieces.
Correct.
They're making life so much harder for. There's a lot of housing companies that want to build a house, but they're going back and forth 10 times to the council.
That's right.
So that's insane.
So overreach of power is just a broad spectrum
everywhere.
expression we
Well,
can
very
say against local government, which I don't call them that, but council, state, and federal is an
And there are
overreach
good
of power.
councillors. Let's just say there are
Absolutely.
definitely good people.
There's
in
always
there.
good eggs
But
amongst the.
There's
the
just way
bats.
too much red tape from the bottom end of the story all the way to the top, and it needs to be cut out and removed because you speed things up. You know, people can only live in a tent for so long before they go nuts.
Yeah, and for every bit of legislation that comes in on a particular area or subject, we should remove the old legislation.
Yes.
Yeah, make
Round of
it.
applause on
Yeah.
that.
Remove
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
One in, one out.
Well, you
Well,
do that when you buy a
absolutely.
new pair of shoes. You chuck out your old one. Well, the guys do,
Yeah.
for reference. The same thing should apply to policies.
Yeah,
All right. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the cost of energy?
I think the cost of energy is driving the cost of living.
Mm.
Yeah, and that renewables are driving that cost of energy. So I think we need to look for better solutions for energy production to reduce the cost of living and take a lot of the pressures off our society.
South
Yeah.
Australia's a good point in that.
Yeah.
It's green, right? Dearest power in the country.
That's
and
right.
it's green.
And they have a lot of blackouts too, don't they?
Yeah, but it's green. It's okay.
That's important.
Yeah, it's green. So they just pay 10, a lot more than anybody.
Yeah.
It's funny. You look,
It
it's
clearly works when they pay more and they're green.
It does, because as we know, the world
Green's
becomes better.
cheaper.
It is, exactly. You can make the world a better place and you can fix the environment by just paying taxes. All right.
There you go.
Well, Australia should be spectacular then with some jazz hands if we were talking about taxes and improve things.
Yeah.
Gosh. What else is there? Is
Get
there's
rid
some
of
more.
stamp duty too. Don't just cut it off at 450.
Yeah,
Just
that's
burn it.
true.
Beautiful.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank our guests, Sophia and Adrian, for coming into the studio, and our guests in the audience here. There's a few of them that have been helping out, and our team. Thank you so much. And to Tony and Ryan, thank you for coming in to do a live stream through video. Those others that were not available, I'm sorry that you weren't able to participate, but hopefully in the future we'll be seeing your faces because you might get elected, because we want as many really strong independents and minor parties getting in to really be a voice for people in Western Australia. So thanks. This is us signing off from Edge Radio Australia. Much love from me and the whole team. Get out there and make sure you vote Labor. I've
I
got
was
to
going to
say
say,
it.
don't even number them in the upper house.
Yeah.
Don't even number them in the upper house.
That's
don't-
my
don't-
opinion personally. Don't go there.
Don't number the majors in the upper house at
Yep.
all.
Just
You
need
don't
number one.
have to number them.
Have a great night. Have a great weekend, and I will see you soon.